One more step and blam! Swallow your soul!
You better give yourself a garlic t-shirt, buddy.
Blood Sisters. They are a secret society of young college girls who have pledged their lives to each other. They will spend their last night together in an abandoned house, but they will not be alone. It was all fun and games at first.
No, don't open it. Tara. There could be spiders. Something, Tara. Dangerous in there, no.
But something was wrong. Very wrong.
Look in the window.
There was a presence, and it wanted something.
Hi, this is Larry Zerner from Friday the 13th, Part 3, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues, episode 240. And this time we're headed to a haunted whorehouse of horror. No, not Erik's flat in Dublin. Some of you may have thought we might be broadcasting live from there. No, we're covering Roberta Findlay's Blood Sisters from 1986. And it'll probably come as no great surprise that this is a Nathan pick. So, Nathan, are you proud of yourself?
I am super proud of myself. I've wanted to talk about Blood Sisters with you guys for a while now, but I don't know why it just kept getting pushed to the wayside. But now here we are.
Well, I think it's fair
in the present.
Well, I think it's fair to say that you've the choosing Blood Sisters lit up the message boards on Facebook like no other. When I say lit up, more kind of like napalmed. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I mean, kind of curious to see what you guys have to say about all the nuances within the film.
Oh, were there any?
Yes.
Oh.
Wow.
We'll come on to Roberta Findlay, as it were, a little bit later. But how is your whorehouse, Erik?
My house is it's a house of pure innocence.
Is it?
Yes.
We don't believe that for a minute, do we? But
these sheets have never been soiled.
Are you talking about like in Train Spotting?
Ew, no. Well, I mean, they've never been soiled that way either.
Yikes. So, but anyway, and Joseph, how are you doing?
Good.
Are you excited to be covering Blood Sisters even?
Well, I should let our listeners know that I am high as a motherfucker, so you kind of have to be to talk about Blood Sisters.
Well.
And you've got a cold, which means you have a sexy voice like Phoebe Buffay.
I had. It's pretty much gone. It's just kind of the leftover, just remnants.
The voice is still sexy.
Oh, thank you.
Well, hopefully we'll hear no fapping sounds come from your end, Erik. So this is anything but a drunk cast.
It's a high cast for me.
Well, fair enough. Okay, well, before we get on to that, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So let's start with you, Nathan. Is there anything you want to tell us about?
No, unfortunately, no. There is a movie that I started, but we started recording and I didn't get a chance to finish it, so I'll talk about it on the next one. But I think it'll be a fun one to discuss. Other than that, I've really just watched what we're going to be covering on this and Patreon. It's just been a very hectic time for us work-wise lately.
Well, fair enough. We shall look forward to that. Well, of course, we are discussing your pick today, so...
yes.
So we'll.
And I did watch Blood Sisters many a time.
Yes. Well, someone has to, Nathan. Someone has to. So we look forward to hearing all about that later. But Joseph, how about you? What have you been watching?
Like Nathan, not a lot. It's just been a lot of comfort stuff. The only thing I could probably shoehorn in would be that show Manifest on NBC that got canceled. And they're making a lot of hubbalub about it because I think the fans are trying to get it come back on Netflix or something. So I gave in and watched a few episodes, and it's okay. It's about a plane that just kind of vanishes midair and reappears 5 years later. The conceit is good. I just don't know if I'll finish it. I think some of the acting is pretty dreadful, and I don't know. It just feels like one of those shows that they can stretch out for like 6 seasons and not give you any answers. So, that's all I've been watching other than you just kind of comfort stuff.
Well, isn't that even worse though? If you've got a show like that, it's kind of around as kind of central mystery, and then they stretch over a season, and Netflix cancels it.
Oh yeah, I guess I can understand the fans being upset with it being canceled because they didn't get to resolve anything. And the guy who created the show has sworn up and down that he does have a resolution in mind that he could turn into a 2-hour movie if need be. But I don't know. It's enjoyable, but I don't know. I'm just having a tough time with it. I just don't see what the fuss is about, really.
What was the film? There was a film, wasn't there, where like a airplane they all get pulled off by aliens.
Was it Millennium?
There was one called Altitude, I believe. It had the giant like kraken-looking monster floating in the sky, and it had like time loop properties going on. It was actually pretty fun.
And in Manifest, Joseph, are they following the people on the plane that disappeared, or are they following the quest to try and find out what happened to the plane?
A bit both, yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of it's a bit mixture of Lost and something less than Lost.
Lost and
found.
Like, yeah, Lost and Found, or like Passengers or something like that.
Cool. Okay, well, maybe one to check out. Is that everything, Joseph?
Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you. Erik, how about you?
Well, the only things I've watched really are ones we've discussed on recently seen in previous weeks. Recently, I saw The Conjuring 3, The Conjuring... The Devil Made Me Do It, is that what it's called? I was kind of surprised by it in one way, because what I'd read on it, I had assumed it was going to be a lot of courtroom mumbo-jumbo, but I don't think there's any courtroom scenes in it from what I can remember. It's that true case of The Devil Made Me Do It, that guy, I can't remember his name, but from 1981, where he killed his landlord and said he was under the influence of a demonic possession at the time. So what The Conjuring 3 does is it takes his story as kind of a prelude, but then to try and back up their claims, they go investigate a similar case in a nearby town to try and get further evidence, and that's where they go crawling around in dark, sub basement play areas, and they light up a cigarette lighter, and there's a scary face there and a loud noise, and it's kind of par for the course for the Conjuring series. It's I'm not won over by them completely. I think they're quite hit and miss for their running time. I think bits of them are good and bits of them are very, very boring. But this one was, it's okay. I find that all of them literally okay. I think the second one is still my favorite, the one that was based on the Enfield haunting. Now you saw that one, Justin, didn't you?
Yeah. What I've seen the
number 3. The recent one.
I like the fact they were trying to do something a bit different, but it kind of felt like they had to shoehorn in the kitchen sink, and they took a kind of a real life case where somebody basically pretended to be possessed so they could get off a murder charge, and then sort of put in all these kind of supernatural sort of hullabaloo and bollocks. I don't know. I know. Trouble is that kind of works when you're doing something like the Enfield haunting, which in itself actually was much more kitchen sink and kind of working class British story, with someone throwing crockery around and throwing and sort of prepubescent teenage girls bouncing up and down on their bed in front of a poster of Starsky and Hutch. But it gets a bit silly when it goes into this big budget Hollywood stuff. But as for a kind of a ghost train ride, it's quite fun. So it works better in that kind of haunted house situation than I think it did with this kind of pretend possession thing. Because the whole Ed and Lorraine Warren things are all bollocks anyway.
How do you know? Where's your proof?
Well,
where's their proof that it happened?
Touche.
We don't have to prove that something didn't happen. They have to prove that it happened.
And also, to be honest, for me, as a non-believer, I find it a bit galling. It all gets a bit gaudy. Each their own. It's not so, but I didn't mind it. It's all right, sort of popcorn sort of thing. But yeah. I didn't think the format for this worked as well as it did for the second one. I thought the second one was much more entertaining, but it's a passable watch.
Yeah. Any of you guys, Nathan or Joseph, have you seen it?
I've not seen any of the Conjuring movies. Nathan, I actually had a point to bring up, but if you want to answer, go ahead, and then I'll bring up my point.
Oh, well, I saw the first two, but I've not seen the newest one. And I liked the first two well enough. I thought they were good for the jump scare crowd, and I like jump scares.
Well, this kind of got me to thinking about the Malignant trailer that just dropped. You guys seen that?
I have, yeah.
I'm a little conflicted on this because they kept touting this as a James Wan giallo, and so I was really interested. But I was really interested. But watching the trailer, I thought it just felt like Insidious Part 73 with all the CGI and the crawling, scary people. How many did they make? They made a lot of them.
They made 4, I think, yeah. But then, to me, The Conjuring feels very much like an Insidious sequel. And so does Annabelle and all those. They feel very much...
I mean, they all just feel the same. But speaking of the Malignant trailer, maybe it is, and they just kind of misdirected us with the trailer. But I don't think this going to be a giallo. Sorry.
I didn't realize it had that description behind it, because I just watched the trailer without knowing anything about it, and I just assumed automatically it was another kind of Insidious or Conjuring type movie.
Yeah, like a haunted house movie.
Yeah, I'm intrigued though to see what it actually is.
Yeah,
because I got an impression that James Wan was kind of a bit fed up with recycling that whole Insidious Conjuring universe style thing, and he wanted to do something a bit different. And I heard all of that talk about it being touted, because apparently he's a big giallo fan. Well, it'd be interesting to see. It certainly wouldn't be the first time that someone's cut together a trailer to make it look like something it isn't necessarily, or to try and sell it in a certain way. So,
well, I was just going to say the other one I saw that's of a new release is A Quiet Place 2. Have any of you guys seen it yet?
Yes.
I thought it was excellent. It's one of those sequels that picks off right where the first one left off, which I love when they do that. And it's more of the same. It's the same cast, same director. So, it doesn't particularly go anywhere new. Well, it has a new plot thread where we find a sort of slight weakness with the aliens. But I loved the opening of it, which is kind of a prequel of such. The first 10 minutes are set on, quote, day one of the invasion, and we don't really learn anything extra about the aliens or what. We just see the small town, they're having a baseball game, and then suddenly they see this sort of what looks like a meteorite falling from the sky, and then all of a sudden there's these aliens running around bashing cars up and killing people and all that type of thing. So I thought that was really impressive. And then as I said, it then picks up where the first one left off, and we find that the deaf daughter is kind of the central character in this one, and she hooks up with Ireland's very own Cillian Murphy, who plays this sort of enigmatic neighbour of theirs. And my claim to fame actually is that the very last time I had a social night out, which was Christmas 2019, with a few of my work colleagues, we were in a pub in Dublin standing right beside Cillian Murphy. And he probably would have just shot A Quiet Place 2 at that stage. So that's, me mixing with the celebrities.
Was he a nice guy? Because I've heard he's a very, very nice guy.
Yes, he is, because there's a friend of mine in work used to share an apartment with him in Cork when they were going to college, and he said he's lovely, but I've never met him myself. So
cool. And you liked the film?
I thought it was excellent. I love the first one. Thought the second one was just as good. Have you seen it, Justin?
I have. Yeah, I had mixed feelings about it.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was very slick. But it kind of delivered a lot more of the same movie, pretty much. I kind of, to be honest, I really liked the opening scenes, and I understand when people said that if you had just done a prequel where you kind of followed the family up to the events of the first movie, it may not have had so much suspense, because you kind of knew that they would all survive up until the events of the first movie. But I would have preferred that. I would have thought it might have been a good idea to have done that, and then the third film as the kind of direct sequel. But to me, it felt a little bit a case of diminishing returns for me, if I'm honest. I thought it was well done. It was slick, but it felt like it had the kind of Scream sequel sort of disease, which you kind of knew no one was going to die. None of the central characters anyway. Once an audience gets to know central characters in horror movies franchises, with some notable exceptions like Randy in Scream 2, but normally they kind of go through the trials and tribulations of a sequel without really anything happening to them, or certainly not dying. But I thought it was okay. I just think for me it felt a little bit like a case of diminishing returns.
Well, I like the way that they kept Cillian Murphy's character kind of ambiguous for the majority of the film. Well, for certainly the first hour of the film. But no, I mean, Justin, you're a slasher fan. You like more of the same. Friday the 13th Part 2 doesn't exactly go off on spectacular tangents, does it?
Well, it's an exception. You can do that with slashers, but other films need to do other different things.
Oh, why don't you just marry Justin then, Joseph, if that's the way you're
No, I want to marry a slasher film.
When you marry a carrot.
But I realise I'm being contradictory, but I don't know. I just thought, because the first film was so extraordinary in a lot of ways, and actually seeing it at the cinema and it being very quiet and all those kind of things really added to it. So seeing this on like pay-per-view at home, it didn't quite have the same sort of feel to it. I don't know. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's more to do with that rather than the movie. Yeah. But and also we've seen myself and Erik. I'm not sure about the other guys. I don't think you have seen them all. We've seen all three of the Fear Street movies now, haven't we? What were your thoughts on the trilogy?
Oh, overall, I thought it was pretty good. I much prefer to watch this type of thing than 10 hours of American Horror Story. I was saying to you guys that particularly the middle part of Fear Street, 1978 one, reminded me a lot of, in terms of its setting, really, more than anything else, of American Horror Story 1984. Whereas that film sort of ended on a convoluted cliffhanger at the end of every episode, and I think there was 10 of them. This one is kind of much more linear and simplistic and more like a slasher film, and I liked kind of the retro vibe they went for in 1978. It feels very much like a summer camp slasher movie, which I liked. I mean, it's not perfect, but I kind of enjoyed that one. Then when they go back to 1666 for the third one, I was saying to you before we started recording, I don't know, I have something about films set in the Middle Ages that I just can't engage with them. You know, something like Army of Darkness. As much as I love Evil Dead 1 and 2, Army of Darkness is one I can't get to grips to, because it's just set in that sort of Arthurian distant past, and I just don't know why those films just don't work for me. So in Fear Street 1966, that first hour, it is well made and all that, but I just wasn't getting into the film at all.
1966 wasn't that long ago, Erik.
Sorry, 1666. Sorry. Well, 1966 is before my time as well. Yeah, so it was.
But would you call it Arthurian?
No, I would call it Beetle-onian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so I don't think this gives anything away. The 1666 film is only in that time. It only takes place in that year for maybe the first hour, maybe a little more than an hour, and then it cuts back to 1994 to tie up all the loose ends. And so I enjoy the second half a lot more. But overall, I thought it was pretty decent. Like, I'm not one for these epic TV series that go on for 10 episodes and particularly with American Horror Story 1984, where it ended with everyone in the cast ending up as a ghost who was a killer or something like that. I just can't even remember the plot of that series. All I remember is that Kajagoogoo made an appearance, and that made me happy. But the rest of that series it ended with somebody who we thought was a good guy ending up as a bad guy. And what I found refreshing in Fear Street is what it sort of dispensed with all of that, although it does have multiple villains with using that sort of possession plot technique, but it was definitely much more linear, which I liked, and less convoluted. So I think the initial intention for this was obviously a cinema release, but they were going to release one every month, I think, over the space of 3 months was the idea, which I think makes sense because they're so closely tied together that if you release them a year apart, the chances are you'd forget what happened in the previous one, or certainly I would. Because I think that's going to be an issue when we discuss Blood Sisters, because we were supposed to record this last weekend and now I don't think I can remember anything about the film. Apart from it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Don't let the cat out of the bag, Erik. Joseph and Nathan, have either of you seen 78 or 1666?
I've seen 78, but I've not seen 1666 yet. And I liked 78. I thought it was fun and entertaining. It wasn't boring to me at all, and that's what I look for, as you guys know. But I think I preferred the first one, honestly. I just love that, I don't know, the first one's just so Scream-like to me.
I do love the supermarket scene in the first one, which is, as I think Justin said in the last episode, is very Intruder-like, with some very gruesome murders.
I think for me, the kind of slasher nerd in me, it kind of felt like if somebody, knew their slasher movies, you wouldn't set a camp slasher in 1978, kind of the year of Halloween, you would have said it in 1980 or 81. And is that just me being super nerdy?
I think that's you being super nerdy, because summer camps existed before Friday the 13th.
I think it's a missed opportunity.
It just feels, for me, it felt sort of like if they'd gone for the 1980 or 81, it would have, it may have, it just 1970, it just seemed a bit anachronistic. Is that the right word? But, the other thing, I enjoyed it. I thought the lead girl I thought she was really good. I thought they kept the leads in it with good. I like the characters. I thought there's a little bit too much of the running around under the tunnels, under the camp.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, and not enough slashing on site. They could have done a bit more of the kind of sort of taking off the camp slashers, of bumping, having a few more set pieces kind of based around classic camp slasher movies for my liking. But again, overall I liked it. The third one, again, without giving anything away, I kind of did actually like that the flashback to the 1666. Oh, it was quite well done. I wasn't quite sure how they were going to shoehorn all loads of music into it, because I'm not sure if there were many sort of banging tunes in 1666.
There's a lot of people with dodgy Irish accents in 1666, though.
That was the thing. For some reason, I'm not quite sure why, because I looked it up, and apparently 2% of the population of North America at that time was Irish.
Okay, well then, we all had Tom Cruise accents from Far and Away, apparently, but they're par for the course. I mean, this is it. As I said, if you've ever seen Ron Howard's film Far and Away, which is often ridiculed in Ireland as having probably the worst attempt at an Irish accent ever by poor old Tom Cruise. Yeah, so that's what they all sounded like in this. It doesn't bother me at all. I just find it kind of funny.
Did you think, Eric, did you think Brad Pitt in Snatch had a good Irish accent?
Oh, well, see, I've never seen Snatch, but I have heard clips from it, and he's supposed to be an Irish kind of traveller, which is a very distinctive type of accent, and it's better than Tom Cruise.
Do you think I have a good Irish accent?
Try it.
Top of the morning to ye.
They're after me Lucky Charms.
It's like you're both from this Emerald Isle. I was totally convinced.
Eric, at least you don't talk like this.
Well, I think probably we do. There's something to that, isn't it? My sister lives in Australia, and she suddenly has that Australian inflection where everything sounds like a question.
Do you like Alan Dale?
You see my dungaree doos?
You could do a southern accent, Justin or Eric.
Well, I did. I went, it's y'all's fault.
There you go.
I'm really bad at accents, as you know, so I won't embarrass myself.
You can do that by not remembering anything about this wonderful film we're about to talk about.
I do have notes, but before we get onto that, I'll just quickly. Have you finished, Erik? Have you?
I have, yeah.
So I've been busy watching as many, and to be honest, not as many as I'd like, but some of the 1991 picks. I have something to say for some, at least some of the ones that some of you all have covered. But I've did a new review on Hysteria Lives for the 1981 film Delusion, which is a kind of very atypical slasher movie, and it's one I think I'd heard of. But I think there's a couple of films called Delusion, or sort of similar titles, and I think I might have got this mixed up. But this one's set in a Hollywood mansion where a nurse goes to look after an elderly man played by Joseph Cotton, and people start dying one by one, beaten to death with a antique chair leg, which is very strangely kind of atypical slasher movie weapon of choice. But the film's very atypical in a lot of ways. It's all the kind of everyone who dies in the movie are men, which is very atypical. So it's a strange little movie, and it's got a kind of weird, kind of sleazy feel to it as well, which like a lot of kind of early 80s movies had, but it doesn't push it as far as some other kind of grindhousey movies. But it's a very odd little movie which didn't make a huge amount of impression at the time, and I don't think it's ever come out on digital release. So have any of you guys seen Delusion?
No,
well, fair enough. But the other one I was going to mention, we had some friends around last night, and for another horror double bill. So we watched the first Demons movie, and of course, everyone's familiar with Demons, and they loved it. And then we decided to, as a follow-up, I had a little choice of movies, and they decided to go for an English horror movie is Terror, Norman J. Warren's Terror from 1978, which is a film that I'd quite like to. I was playing with the idea of choosing it for next time, but I've chosen a different film for my choice for next time. But Terror, I remember I'm writing a review for the website, but it was one of my recollections was my mother took me to see Grease at the cinema in 1978, that long ago. We went to see Grease, and in the lobby of the cinema, I remember the poster for Terror, and I would have been about 9 years old, and thinking, oh my goodness, that looks absolutely, literally terrifying. And that really stuck in my head. And it was kind of, I thought that's what I really want to go and see, that movie, not Grease. But obviously that wasn't to be.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Grease.
No, I don't, I don't mind Grease. And I wanted to see Grease. I was kind of back at the time. It was kind of Grease mania in the UK and everywhere else in 1978. But yeah, the little kind of horror geek me, even at that young age, wanted to go and see Terror because it looked fantastic. And I love Norman J. Warren movies. And I actually met him at a screening of one of his movies about 10 or 15 years ago. And he was a lovely guy. And I've written a bit about this in the review, which I'm just working on at the moment. But Terror is a kind of a bizarre mishmash. It was kind of inspired by, it was like the English Hysteria and the English kind of giallo, I kind of guess, where it starts with a kind of a witch getting retribution on her ancestors. And the first half of the movie is kind of giallo slasher movie deaths. People being stabbed to death and garroted and various kind of things. And the second half is very kind of Suspiria, supernatural tinged, flying objects attacking people, including one little fun factoid that I found out when I was looking into this was there's a scene where somebody in a film studio gets attacked by rolls of film and it gets kind of wrapped up a bit like the scene in Suspiria where the woman falls into the thing of the room of barbed wire, but this is kind of film, and apparently it was a damaged film from Saturday Night Fever, which I thought was very disco. But it's a fun little movie. Have any of you guys seen it?
I think we've all seen it, because I think it wasn't on Patreon on our top of 1978.
Yeah, I picked it as my number 3, I think, for 1978. I love Terror. I think it's fantastic. And interestingly enough, a lot of the critics of Terror, pointed out the Suspiria similarities. And this movie crushed Suspiria at the box office in the States, which is kind of interesting.
Well, it's kind of one of the other things I found, because it was released by Crown International Pictures, who put out Don't Answer the Phone and various other kind of trash classics, and they bought it specifically as to capitalize on the success of John Carpenter's Halloween. So at a time where, unlike now, where you have people making horror movies, to kind of ape the success of any type of movie, you're kind of what they call the rip-off studios, the Asylum.
Mockbusters. Yeah,
even before films come out, they'll do a mockbuster just on the chance it'll be successful. So back then, they was very slow off the mark with Halloween. So there's very few films in 1979. So Crown International bought the international rights for Terror. And kind of because he was kind of aping Jali, he kind of preempted the slasher movie craze, because it was kind of made it's really before he'd seen Halloween, so it was a kind of happy accident. But it made a lot of money in the States just by happy accident. So yeah, but that's one I'm sure we'll cover on the main pick show sometime, because it is a kind of weird one. It's half slasher and then it goes into complete balmy giallo thing. But the one thing I love about it as well, watching it again, my friends loved it because they were kind of a certain age, was the kind of parodying the English sex comedy.
I love that bit, yeah.
Bath Time for Brenda.
I just want to mention, I love the TV spot for Terror as well, with that narrator. He's like, "No one can escape terror. Terror, rated R." Sounds like a pirate.
Yeah, so a lot of fun. So I think that was... I'm sure there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So anyway, yeah, okay. Well, I think that probably means we can't put it off any longer, Nathan. You know what's coming next?
Good. Sexy college girls pitted against an unspeakable power, ready to prey upon their naked bodies and souls. 7 beautiful co-eds in a sorority hazing are blindfolded and driven to a massive looming specter of a house. They are forced by Linda, their leader, to spend the night. 13 years ago, the house was a brothel. Now it's rumored to be haunted. Their boyfriends have rigged the place with harmless gags to scare them silly. But after dark, a hideously foul, curling fog twists around the house. The souls of murdered prostitutes and their tricks come out. Each girl is drawn into a web of seduction, torture, and madness, cornered into a grisly and bloody ritual of passage, an eternal sisterhood of the undead. Bizarre, eerie, and violent, Blood Sisters will make your heart race and your skin crawl. Consult your doctor before viewing. So, did any of you consult your doctors before you watched?
I wish I would have consulted a mortician.
Well, I needed something to get my blood pressure down.
Yeah, it was terrifying. It made my skin crawl and my heart pulse.
Well, Justin's, back of video blurb isn't much, better. It's 8 beautiful, sexy sorority girls attempt to brave the night in an abandoned, haunted whorehouse in a horror story that will petrify the most jaded of horror film fans. So there you go.
And
anyway, Blood Sisters, I am a huge fan of it. I love it. I love the big mansion setting. I think that Roberta Findlay does a lot of like shots from the ground up looking at the house. I love that kind of stuff. They did it in Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well. But Blood Sisters I find to be a lot of fun. I love all the characters. I think it's interesting that you've got all these, like ghost prostitutes in the whorehouse, but they really don't interact with the killer. And I don't know. It's almost like they're just there.
It's almost like the plot wasn't properly thought through.
Yeah, I feel like that maybe if they had shown all the prostitutes getting murdered in the beginning, it would have been different, but they didn't. I love the killer's getup, what the killer's wearing. I love the scene where Alice makes a break for it and runs, and she ends up outrunning the killer. And I was thinking, of course she did, because the killer's wearing like these sandals that are way too small for their feet. So yeah, of course she did. And then of course the killer also takes a fall, which was pretty funny actually. But no, I mean, it's really fun. I think it's very entertaining, and I know that some people may not agree with that, but I find the haunted house shenanigans along with the slasher stuff to just be, fun. Just very fun. And, I was a little upset at the ending because you guys know I don't prefer those kind of endings. But Justin's review said something that I'm like, it's actually kind of true. It's the scene where all the girls have escaped from the house and gotten into the van outside. And the girls decide it's too cold in the van to sit out there. So they'd rather go back in the house where the killer is because at least it'll be warmer. And Justin's review is like, let's face it, they didn't deserve to live. He's got a point there because, that was kind of a stupid idea. But where would we be if characters didn't make dumb moves in horror films? We would just have a lot of horror movies where characters make good decisions. They probably last about 10 minutes each.
Yep, because even in the biggest Hollywood blockbusters, Nathan, it's full of stupid people making stupid decisions.
But anyway, I love Blood Sisters a lot, but I can't wait to hear what you guys think of it. So I'm going to start by asking Justin, what did you think of Blood Sisters?
Well, one thing I was going to say that I thought was interesting, and I think, talking about the ghostly thing, and the fact is it's kind of more of that kind of haunting where you see replaying of past events. Right, they sort of say, the whole thing of like seeing a Roman centurion walking down the hallway or someone walking through a wall because there used to be a doorway there. So these aren't like interactive ghosts necessarily, are they?
That's true.
Although having said that... I mean,
there is the one part where they whisper Marnie's name, but that's it.
And also, I wonder, because one of them says this house smells of ghost sex, and I wonder what that actually smells like.
I know, we should ask Kesha. You know the singer Kesha? She had sex with a ghost.
Did she?
Yeah, that's what she said in an interview once. Yep.
So do you reckon there's ectoplasm everywhere?
Ew.
To be honest, I quite enjoy this movie. I mean, it's got a lot of faults. It's very low budget, which isn't a problem. It depends what you do with the budget. I found it kind of goofy, fun. It's not a great movie, Nathan. As you know, in Heart of Hearts, it's not a traditionally good movie, but there was a lot to enjoy in it. I mean, I quite like the kind of gurning and the wide-eyed thing, especially like I can't remember the character's name, but she's got like those big glasses, and after all these people have been murdered, she goes, "Oh my God, someone I've lost my watch."
Yeah.
Things like that, and she goes, "Oh no, I haven't. Oh, here it is." And it's just kind of, and I think she may be the one who goes boss-eyed when she sees the ghosts getting on, or one of them does. And I quite like the scenes where they're quite atmospheric for, again, that kind of low budget feel to it, with the seeing through the kind of the window, or through the mirror, the two-way mirror of the ghosts having sex, basically. It also has probably the oldest frat brothers ever committed to film. They were probably like 2 years off retirement, weren't they? Especially one of them. He kind of looked like, I'm trying to think, he looked like, he looked like more like Joe Biden than a frat brother. So I mean, the only thing, it does, for me, it feels like, as a slasher movie, it does seem to take an awful long time for any slashing to actually take place. It could have peppered up a few more deaths in there, I think, on the run up to that. But I can't remember it. It feels like the first slasher movie death doesn't, apart from that opening, the murder scene where the killer shoots the rather nonplussed looking kind of sex worker in the head, and the brother, which can remind me a little bit, though, kind of the opening of Blood and Lace, where the opening scene where the killer offs their mother and her squeeze. But yeah, I mean, it's not a great movie, but I think it's probably, I think if you watch it in the right frame of mind, which is probably unhinged, I guess, then it can be quite fun, you know. So that's my tuppence, Nathan.
All right, Erik.
Yeah, well, you might be surprised to hear this, Nathan, but I also thought it was a perfectly fine film. I wouldn't go any further than that. I've seen plenty worse. I mean, I like the Halloween style prologue with the POV of the child, and I found it also kind of reminiscent, as Justin said, of Blood and Lace, and also the Boogeyman. What I thought was interesting in this was the shooting takes place 13 years before the main portion of the film. So whenever they go flashback to the ghostly whores and that, they're always playing like 1940s music. So if this timeline is correct, the events at the start should have taken place around 1973 or 1974. So they should all be listening to like T-Rex or Donny Osmond or something, or maybe Susie. She was probably on her 9th album by that stage. I like the setup of the film, Nathan. I mean, the sorority hazing is a real traditional horror movie setup, but I think the opening of it is quite well done. That, you know, they have to spend the night in this supposedly haunted mansion. It's quite Scooby-Doo, except with boobies and hairspray and 80s clothes, which is not a bad thing, apart from the boobies, obviously. There's one scene in it actually that made me chuckle. It was where one of the frat boys puts a pair of black lacy knickers in his face, and it reminds me of a picture that Justin used to have on Facebook of him with a black veil on, and it made me go tee-hee-hee. I love that scene at the party at the start where that girl takes her bra off and I presume as a sort of a mating ritual of some kind, and one of her friends says, "Hey, I thought bras were in." I thought that one of the girls is she's actually, they make sort of very not terribly complimentary remarks to her. They accuse her of being fat, I think, and she's actually quite thin. She's the one that looks a bit like Sally from Demons 2, and apparently she's supposed to be fat, but really, like, you know, I'm fat, this girl isn't, so, you know, cut her some slack, girls. I thought the actual hazing that the girls have to go through in this was like quite funny, because it's so tame. I mean, they have to spend the night in this haunted house, which obviously nobody thinks is haunted, and the traps that are set for them are like a jack-in-the-box or a plastic skull on a piece of elastic. It's like absolutely heart-stoppingly terrifying. Yet, in fairness, the girls all scream when they encounter these, you know, poorly set up stunts. So what am I to complain about it? And the hazing itself involves them doing kind of a treasure hunt around the house, trying to collect 5 items. So it's kind of like the brothel version of Supermarket Sweep. If you guys get that TV show in the States, I don't know if you do, but basically it's a quiz show where people have to run around a supermarket and find certain items. It's quite popular over here.
I have run over 1,000 people. This is a reference to Supermarket Sweep YouTube poop that was edited. Sorry, you may continue. I told you I'm high.
Now I'm intrigued. Yes. It's at the treasure hunt section of this film that I think it kind of runs out of steam a bit. It's lots of people wandering around with flashlights, not fleshlights, flashlights, and having ghostly visions of the brothel's past. I mean, there's a scene where a girl picks up a dress and stares into a mirror for what feels like about 20 minutes, and she sees, some hoary action taking place in the mirror, and that seems to go on for a while. And as Justin said, one of the things I noticed and I've taken note of here is the girl with the big 80s glasses. I think Bonnie is her name, who starts crying and going, "Oh my God, somebody stole my watch," which is exactly the type of thing you'd be thinking of in the middle of all this mayhem. Not. So, technically the film isn't brilliant. There are a number of shots where it seems like there's a character speaking, but all you can see is their shoulder, which, makes it feel very kind of Doris Wishman. And, the effects aren't exactly, Avatar. We see a scene of blood dripping on a crisp packet, and it looks like orange juice rather than blood. But Bonnie, when she falls from the height, is done quite well, I thought. But otherwise, it's not an effects-heavy movie as such. But overall, it had a decent setup. The final 15-20 minutes was quite good. A bit sluggish in the middle, where it's just people with flashlights finding dresses and garters and staring into mirrors for 5 minutes. But overall, I thought it was a much better film than I was anticipating. I had seen it before, Nathan, which was about 20 years ago. But I couldn't remember anything about it. And when I saw the people responding to the Facebook post about it being our next pick, my heart sank and I was like, oh, this is going to be dreadful. But surprisingly, it wasn't. So put that on the poster.
Awesome. Joseph.
Well, I'm of three minds of this film. Let's start with the good stuff. Every time the girls are on screen, I absolutely love Blood Sisters. I want to spend as much time with these girls as possible because I think their characters are fantastic. The mind number two, every time the guys are on screen, I just want to die. I don't find them interesting. I don't find them funny. I find them annoying. And I just really want to get back to the girls. My third mind is that I find the slasher stuff kind of slight. It's kind of suspenseless. I don't know. I just didn't find it had any kind of kick to it. So I wasn't really interested in that as well. I found, myself enjoying my time with the girls, and luckily I think they're on screen more than enough to warrant this film a marginal recommendation. I don't think it's anything wonderful like the other guys have said, but every time the girls are on screen and they're kind of just bickering back and forth, I had a great time. So take from that what you will, Nathan.
Awesome. I'm going to spoil the movie now. The killer wears a big moo-moo in this movie, and a wig and these big sandals. But the killer turns out to be Russ, the boyfriend of Linda, the head of the sorority. And I love, and Joseph and I always used to laugh about this, that when she's just like, why? And he's just like, but Linda, I'm crazy. And then he just kills her. It's so absurd, but it's also very direct and to the point, I'd say.
It's really moving as well.
Oh, did you feel bad for Linda at the end, Erik?
I did. Well, she has loved ones and family, and
yeah, that's true. I felt bad for Alice. It wasn't very bright to be wearing that vest when you're trying to get away from a murderer.
Well, no, she does ditch it in the woods, though, doesn't she?
Oh, yeah, at some point she does. Yeah.
Okay, well, should we do some background? Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
Amy Brentano, who played Linda, was also in the movie Breeders. And do you guys remember Breeders? It's the one with that great Wizard video artwork.
Is that I remember seeing, I think there's a photo of that that caused controversy where there's 3 naked women in a bathtub of what looks like milk, but, it could be man juice.
Well, that's kind of the artwork, too. It's 3 naked women running down the city streets, and there's these tentacles and this alien kind of looming over behind them, trying to ensnare them.
Mm.
Yeah. Shannon McMahon, who plays Alice, was also in Pledge Night from the 90s. I can't wait for us to cover that one. I'm going to pick it at some point, too, so
of course
be ready.
No, actually, Pledge Night is surprisingly good.
On IMDb, it says Ruth Collins is in this movie. I don't know. She's supposed to be playing one of the prostitutes, but I couldn't decipher which one she was. But Ruth Collins, if you guys remember, we did a commentary for Doom Asylum, and she played Tina of Tina and the Tots.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she was the one. Wasn't she the one with the long blonde hair in this? With the
Maybe
lesbian,
so. I mean, she's a blonde in Doom Asylum, so maybe.
She was. It's the lesbian scene, wasn't it? With the lesbian ghosts.
Oh, and I thought it was. It really dated the movie. That scene where one of the girls mockingly says to one of the characters, "Oh, I forgot your preference. It was a girl, right?" And I was like, that dates the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that would not be accepted. And that's all the background that I have.
Sounds like knock once for yes. That is good. You had a lot more background than you usually do, Nathan, so you should be commended for that.
The shade.
What?
Is that a compliment or an insult?
That's shade, Nathan.
That's not shade.
It is shade.
Goodness sake. Anyway, thank you, Nathan, for all your hard work. So, Erik, how about you?
Yes, I've got extensive amount of behind-the-scenes information here. Brian De Palma's movie Sisters was released in some territories as Blood Sisters. That's it. Thanks. Bye.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
You're welcome.
Wow. Well, thank you. See, Nathan, you did much better than Erik this time.
But not often, because usually I say no.
Well,
but I'm just, it's due to busyness.
I have one other bit, actually. Larry is played by an actor called John Fasano, who was also the assistant director on this film, on Blood Sisters. But he went on to make Black Roses and Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Cool.
But now that is officially all I have. Bye.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Erik. Joseph, how about you?
Well, Sony released Blood Sisters to VHS in 1987. It got a release to VHS in Sweden the same year via Golden Video. Same artwork as the US version. I'm sure that same artwork is on all releases of this film. Composer, producer, camera operator, and overall jack off all trades, Walter E. Sear had an illustrious career up until around 1988, having composed the score for this, along with Lurkers and Prime Evil the following year, and having previously worked in the music department on the U.S. releases of The Beyond and Zombie Holocaust. He was musically involved also with Let's Scare Jessica to Death and Tenement. He also has 3 uncredited adult film co-directing credits alongside Roberta Findlay, and I'm assuming more that weren't listed on the IMDb. The 3 listed titles being Fringe Benefits from 1974, featuring Eric Edwards, Justine, A Matter of Innocence from 1980, featuring Vanessa Del Rio, and Liquid Assets from 1982, featuring Ron Jeremy. Fringe Benefits is interesting in so much because of its plot synopsis, which reads, used to pacifying his workplace's female workers with sex, Harry flat out got carried away and raped his boss's secretary and lover. Now fired and impotent, he turns to Dr. Tight Twat, who takes advantage of him before he does the same. I love that name, Dr. Tight Twat. Sear was also the editor for Blood Sisters on top of scoring the film, and he apparently came up with the story idea for Snuff in 1975. And although he passed away in 2010, he left behind this lasting bit of history as the camera operator on the aforementioned Fringe Benefits under the name of Curtis Cockalot. So, a very illustrious career for Walter E. Sear from Blood Sisters, but that's pretty much all the background I have.
It sounds like he could have worked on Bath Time for Brenda.
Yeah.
So, well, Roberta Findlay, I've got some information about her as a director. I mean, she's one of the few women directors of horror movies at the time. And she was a big horror movie fan, but she kind of bookended her career with films in the adult arena. She wrote the script to this, directed and photographed the movie, and she was interviewed by the Palm Beach Post in 1986. And she kind of reminds me a little bit of, we talked about Doris Wishman before with A Night to Dismember. Funnily enough, when this film was released or about to be released, there was a trade ad for it where it said the girls of whatever sorority have a night to dismember, which I thought was a funny coincidence, talking about Doris Wishman. But she told the paper in 1986, she's in a very kind of deadpan way, she said it's about a maniac that runs around killing nubile girls, talking about Blood Sisters. And she said there was no message, just entertainment. And she said, as Louis B. Mayer said, if you want to send them a message, call Western Union. So she was just interested in, said she loved special effects and loved seeing films with people having their heads ripped off.
Me too.
Yeah, well, of course. And she was, apparently she used 11 gallons of fake blood on her previous film, The Oracle. I've not seen The Oracle, but I remember seeing kind of some splashy photos in Fangoria. Nathan, I presume you've seen The Oracle.
No, I've actually not seen it. I want to, though.
Okay, well. She loved horror, and her favourite director was Alfred Hitchcock, which I'm sure you realised. She's married to Michael Findlay, who was infamously, they worked on Snuff together, the infamous film, which wasn't really a snuff movie, it was sold as one. And he was killed in 1977 in the infamous accident when the helicopter atop New York's Pan Am building crashed. And I think he got, basically about 4 or 5 people got chopped up in the blades of the helicopter atop of this skyscraper. And he was heading to Cannes or some film festival with a 3D system that he had been developing. So if he had survived, then he may have preempted the 3D boom. Although apparently he was working on a 3D movie called 12 Nuns, which the mind boggles what kind of 3D movie that would have been. So the film was filmed in January of 1986 at various locations in New Jersey and New York. It was kind of a micro-budgeted affair, about $50,000. It was originally called, it was shot under the title Slash. So not Blood Sisters, that was the title it was given to later. And she bookended her porn career with horror movies, and the other ones, I've not seen any of the other ones to be honest, but there's Primeval, Tenement, Lurkers, which you mentioned, The Oracle, Band, and of course Blood Sisters. Now this film actually got a review in Variety, but before I do that, it also got I think I sent you this paper clip. It was from when it was released on Sony Video for $69.95. And the description of this was an erotic film in the tradition of The Hunger. No, it says an erotic film in a tradition of The Hunger as a sorority hazing in an old house becomes a life and death struggle between the living and the long dead.
It almost sounds like they might have gotten close to getting a cinema release with this at one point. The way all this advertisement kind of plays out, it almost feels like it was leading up to that, but they just didn't quite get it.
Well, The Oracle was released in South Florida, so to screens. So I think it was made probably around about the same time, for around about the same budget. So yeah, it could well have got a cinema release, but it did actually get, as I mentioned, it got a review in Variety, of all things, where they called it horror by the numbers. And I'll read just a few bits from it. It said, Blood Sisters is a relatively new film, lensed last year under the generic title Slash, but relies upon old hat format that genre fans tired of at least 5 years ago. Pick bypass theatrical distribution for home video use instead. Filmmaker Roberta Findlay's script mixes one part The Nesting and one part Hell Night. 7 pledges to the Kappa Gamma Tau sorority are escorted to a spooky old mansion by a sorority sister, where they have to spend the night, as we all know this, for a scavenger hunt. It says Pit consists mainly of the girls wandering around the house searching with flashlights picked off in gory fashion. There is plenty of nudity and softcore sex, including the requisite lesbian scene, but no scares and little of interest. As a snooty pledge, Mary Matchart is the prettiest actress in the cart, but none of them have challenging roles. Special effects are minor. So, but bearing in mind that was obviously for the kind of movie it's the movie press for people looking to possibly to rent it for their or to rent it for video shops, etc. I think that's everything I've got. So. Blood Sisters. Anything last things to say, Nathan?
Just that their hazing was a not to dismember.
That was the one I was looking for. Yes. So, excellent. Okay, so Joseph, what was the kind of consensus on Blood Sisters on the group?
Well, from 24 comments overall, we have two very differing opinions this week. First up, from Facebook, Miles Glasscock writes, "This movie is rare for an 80s horror to have a group of sex-positive sorority girls. They aren't just a group of dumb, quote-unquote, girls in this story to show their breasts and be slaughtered. There is an unnecessary ghost hookers plot line. When you say it out loud, it sounds really cool, but doesn't really pay off like it should. These girls managed to take on the character traits of the women from Sex and the City before there ever was such a thing. One last thought. By 87, the horror movie formula had become very familiar with audiences, including the idea of the final girl. This movie tried to change this horror movie trope with a surprise twist. I don't want to share because it would be a super spoiler. I think we've already spoiled that. But he goes on to say, to today's standards, this movie is boring, dull, and poorly acted, but you have to watch knowing that it was pretty groundbreaking for an oversaturated slasher movie market. If you can find a copy of the movie with the Joe Bob Briggs introduction, it helps to appreciate the movie for what it tried to be." That was from Miles Glasscock from Facebook. And from Instagram, David Helvering writes, "What are my thoughts? It sucks. Bet I'll make listener of the week with that nuanced commentary." Indeed you did, David. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Listen on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and about 1 billion other podcatchers. If you enjoy the show and are willing and able to provide a monetary contribution, please consider joining us in our bloody brothel we like to call Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That will get you exclusive access to shows not released via podcatchers. If you got something to say, our email address is thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Well, I tell you, my little joke is you won't have a ghost of a chance of laughing this week when this happens.
It's my joke of the week. It's so bright and fantastic.
What do you call a scary film set in a brothel? A horror film. A horror film. Horror film. Horror film. Horror. It sounds a bit like horror.
Oh, Erik.
Erik, we've postponed this like twice, and that's what you left us with.
Hang on, let me ask Mistake. Mistake, if you think that joke was funny, play your guitar.
Mistake by name. Okay, is there anything left to say? I feel like we're missing something out.
What we're going to cover next time.
Oh, yes, Justin.
I've been keeping them on tenterhooks. Well, it's a film that I've been interested in rewatching, and it's a very controversial movie, and it's controversial for a number of reasons. One is it may not be considered to be a slasher movie, but it was a film that was released in 1980 at the height of, or the burgeoning height of the slasher movie. So it's certainly slasher adjacent, and the film is William Friedkin's Cruising.
That is totally a slasher film. I'm sorry, Cruising is a slasher film.
And I've still never seen it, but and I want to see it, so that's good.
It's bloody fantastic.
Okay, well there you go. So I thought it'd be an interesting film for us to cover for a number of reasons. It's going to be it'll be very much of its time, and it's got a lot of interesting background, and it's kind of a big budget, controversial sort of horror slasher movie in the same way, or for different reasons, to Dress to Kill. And also I might touch upon Windows as well, which is the Talia Shire movie, the kind of the lesbian version of Cruising, for want of a better term. Very controversial movie, but it'd be an interesting one to cover. So a different tone to maybe what we covered this time.
Interesting. Look forward to that one.
I like it.
Okay, and so what are we playing out with, Nathan?
I wanted to play out with the music from Blood Sisters because I think it's very, very good and very fitting for the time frame.
That surely won't get us into trouble with any of the copyright claims. Although, I don't know, Early Frost was a big surprise in that department.
Yeah, didn't we run into some problems with that?
Yeah, on YouTube, someone copyright claimed the trailer, which is their right, but I just did not expect that.
Well, there you go. So, okay, well, thank you, Nathan, for Blood Sisters, and we will return next time to New York City for the well-known slasher Cruising. And so until then, we'll bid you a fond adieu and say goodbye to the good people.
Enjoy your fondue.
Indeed. Make sure it's vegan. Okay. All right. See you guys later.